In this video, you're going to learn how and why you might want to use an external distortion or overdrive pedal with your amp modeler. So as you can see here, I'm going to be using the Headrush MX5. It's a great unit. I've had it for about a month, but the things that I'm going to talk about are no different than any digital amp modeler. Kemper, Fractal Audio, Line 6, Hot Tone or Hot One or Hotone. I don't know how you say that brand. NUX, Moore, it doesn't matter. They all work exactly the same. They all sound great. And what I'm going to show you in this video applies to all of them. So the question that I had using the Headrush MX5 was, can I get a better distorted sound using an external analog pedal? Is there something inherently wrong with digital, especially high gain or high distortion, more accurately, sounds? Because when you pull up a high gain amplifier and you use the stock amplifier modeling in the Headrush MX5, and I suspect a lot of other products, there's this sort of high frequency noise that you can get, which I've heard other users describe as a fizzing sound. Now, there are ways to get around that by using a parametric EQ with a high cut or a low pass filter, or instead of using the built-in cabinet models, use an IR and cut those frequencies, because in the Headrush MX5, if you look in the IR section, you have the ability to apply a low cut or a high cut. So getting rid of those or taming those down is really pretty easy. But this thought always stuck in the back of my mind. Can I get a better distortion with an external overdrive or distortion pedal? And the one that I got was the NUX Fireman. It is what I would call a medium to high gain or high distortion pedal. It's a funny thing, and you'll hear me use both terms. When guitar players talk about gain, they're almost always referencing overdrive, clipping, or distortion, and not usually how gain is talked about. If you talk to other audio professionals about gain, they will expect a different sort of thing to happen. If you increase the gain, they won't think that you're increasing distortion. They're going to think that you're increasing the level, which is more accurately how gain should be used. But I know for a lot of guitar players and products out on the market, gain means distortion. In fact, with this NUX Fireman, there are two knobs that say gain, and moving them up and down doesn't really give you a huge change in level, but it definitely gives you a huge change in overdrive, clipping, and distortion. So I think you've probably figured out by now, you can use overdrive and distortion pedals with your amp modelers. The one thing that you want to keep in mind, and this applies to all the different brands, is managing your input levels. Because unlike an amplifier, in a guitar amplifier, if you take an input to one of the channels and you keep feeding it more level, the amplifier will transition from a linear gain, meaning 6 decibels of input gets you roughly 6 decibels of output, to a nonlinear gain where the amplifier starts to go into overdrive and distortion. So 6 decibels of input no longer means an additional 6 decibels of output. When amplifiers go into distortion, it compresses the signal where the transients or the spiky bits of the audio are clipped in some kind of way, which results in a lower dynamic range. And I'm going to show you that coming up in just a second here. But to manage your levels, you need to somehow verify or look at the levels coming into your pedal to make sure that you don't clip them. Because in the digital realm, if you keep increasing your signal level going into an analog to digital converter, once you get up to 0 decibels, there is no more output that you will get on the other side of that. It will just clip it in a very nasty and unnatural and terrible sounding way. So on the Headrush MX5, I'm going to go into the input block here and take a look at my levels. I'm going to pull up my neck position humbucker here and just take note of my input level. The pedals, my Cali 76 and the Fireman, are not engaged, and just take note of where you see the levels coming into the pedal. Bridge pickup, same thing. So what you can see is that the level on the meter was a couple of times it just touched 0 decibels. Now, I don't think that this is actually 0 decibels, because I think there's probably a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of hidden headroom built into the pedal. I haven't tested that, but that's my feeling based on my experience with the pedal. But you can see that I'm pretty close to the top. Most of the time it's peaking at the second to last indicator. These are basically 6 decibel increments if you count up all the little indicators and then you divide by the range that it's giving you. So I'm going to kick on the NUX distortion on channel number 1. The distortion, or what is labeled as gain, is all the way down, but I've set the level to be what I think is appropriate for how I like to use this. So I think most folks would agree that using the distortion pedal sounds louder, but you can see on the meter that it's metering less, meaning the voltage going into the pedal is lower. Well, how can that be? Well, like I mentioned earlier, a distorted sound or an overdriven sound is a compressed sound. It reduces your dynamic range. The transients are clipped, meaning they're cut off, and so they're lower in amplitude. And then to get a usable level, we turn up the overall volume or level or actual gain. And so our noise level comes up, which is why on high distorted amplifiers, you can hear background hiss. Lower level stuff comes up and upper level stuff comes down. That compresses audio. You know, after you hit a note, the audio is going way down now. But when it's compressed, listen to when I kick this in, that just jumped up a lot. So the overall impression is that it's louder, but we're metering at or about the same as it was when it wasn't distorted. So even if I switch over to the second channel, which has a ton of distortion, you'll see the same thing. Now, I think you would agree that that sounds a lot louder, but it's metering about the same or maybe even just a little bit below where it is on the dry signal, because more distortion equals more compressed. Listen to this. I'll play this chord and let it ring, and then I'll kick on the distortion, and this is a lot of distortion. You'll hear it come way up in level. That's really the thing that you want to be aware of, is you don't want to drive the input so much that it causes clipping, and you really don't need that much more level than your clean tone, because a distorted sound sounds louder because it's really compressed, and all of the low level stuff you can hear when I kick this on. Just listen to the background noise. Even if I turn my volume all the way down, this is the quietest sound that I could make with this pedal with the high distortion channel engaged. I can't get lower than that, not without turning this down. As soon as I start to turn the volume up on my guitar, that noise level comes up even more, which means if I turn my volume up all the way, even on a single coil pickup, well, that's even more noise, but I'll leave it on the humbucker, and I play really quietly, I can't get quieter than what you're hearing right now. So without this, that means I get more dynamic range, and with distortion, I get less dynamic range. The second thing you might be wondering is, why would you want to? So products like the Headrush MX5 and all the other amp modelers out there, the multi-effects units, they have distortion pedals or distortion effects in them, in addition to amplifiers, which create a range of different overdriven and distorted sounds. Why would you need something like this? 2 reasons maybe. One, you can't find the exact distortion that you're looking for. It's possible that the distortions that you find in these pedals just aren't doing it for you, or you're not able to get the same sort of sound. So this is an easy way to get a really good sound really quickly. The second reason you might come across is that you're not able to do the type of routing that you want. Maybe you want to use 4 reverbs, 4 delays, and you only have room left for an amplifier and an IR. Those are the only effects blocks you have left. And you want to go from a clean to a distorted sound. Well, in that case, you have to use a distortion pedal to get that, because you just don't have any more effects available. You've run out of processing power on your unit. That's the second reason. Now, for me, I really like this NUX Fireman distortion pedal. I think it sounds great. However, I'm probably not going to keep it because I don't think that there's enough difference between the higher distortion level and the lower distortion levels that you can get, because after about noon on these gain knobs, which again, gain in this case, in most guitar world means distortion, after noon, there's not a lot of extra distortion that happens. I can tell it's doing something, but it's so subtle that pretty much at noon, especially with humbuckers, is all the gain that I think I would ever use. Secondly, I've created an amplifier setup in here that sounds almost identical. So it's not exact, and I'm sure you heard that it's not exact, but it sounds close enough to me that if I switched 5 times without looking, I don't think I could be able to tell which one I was playing. And the particular amp is the Lead 800 TS mod, which is a Marshall JCM 800 with a tube screamer mod for that extra shred sound. And I'm using an IR. In fact, it's the same IR I'm using on the clean channel, but I'm using a high cut to get rid of that fizzing or high frequency noise that I mentioned earlier. There's still maybe just a touch there, but it doesn't really sound bothersome to me. So because there's not a huge difference in the gain or distortion levels between the lowest you can set this and where I think the gain pretty much stops becoming usable at noon, I'm probably going to return this NUX Fireman distortion. Even though on a single coil sound, if I kick in some reverb here, I think it sounds really nice with the gain all the way down like I have it here in channel number 1. And I can still dig into it. And I think that sounds really nice. So I do like the pedal. I just wish I could get a little less distortion on it. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up button. And if you have a comment or question, leave it below and I'll do my best to answer it. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing and maybe even hitting that bell icon. That would be really awesome. Until next time, my name is Dave Bode, and I'll see you around.